Welcome back to B Movie Bash.
Yeah, we are.
I was about to come in with like the podcast for in the B Movie bashing, and then I couldn't breathe. Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Maybe I should
get used to that.
Different songs. It's gonna be different every time.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. I just forgot that was a thing. So, well, I'm Shannon.
I'm Alyssa.
And this is B Movie Bash.
Welcome.
Podcast where we review awful movies so that you don't have to.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Though sometimes it's like, you gotta watch them.
It's true. It's like
understand.
so bad that you just have to go through it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So, this week we had a movie that was suggested to us by our friend James. So,
yeah, shout out to James if
I don't know if you listen.
Yeah.
But thank you if you do.
If you do, I think you're our only real fan, so appreciate it.
But also, no thank you, because you made me watch this movie. So. It was a good one for the podcast, though.
Yeah,
it's just not a good movie, and that's the point.
Yeah.
So,
also, again, that's my dogs.
Sorry. Not sorry.
Yeah.
We'll edit it out as much as we can.
As much as we can, but they will be there.
Yeah.
So, yes. Anyway.
Alrighty. So, okay. I did the dumb thing where I watched this last night without taking notes so that I could take it all in, and then I had to watch it again today to take notes. But it was fun because I got to watch it with Tony last night, and so he was like commenting with me and stuff. But I had to watch this twice is the moral of the story here.
I discovered that's how I have to do it. Otherwise, I'm writing notes to myself that I'm like, why the fuck? Yeah. Why is this? Who is that? And then it gets explained like 15 minutes later, and I'm like, oh.
And then you go back,
and then I have to
Tom,
go back and
Tom. Yeah, exactly.
Edit some notes and shit.
And it's good to like, if you're taking notes the whole time, you're not like, getting the whole effect of the movie.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's a good thing.
Okay.
But okay.
Cheers. There we go.
So the movie that was so lovingly suggested to us, again, thank you, James, is a movie called Pledge Night.
Pledge Night. Okay.
Yeah. So like,
is it like
Greek
a college thing? Oh, okay.
pledges.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm sure you can kind of, conceptualize where this is going. And you're right. So it was made in 1988.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you know how a couple weeks ago, we talked about how in like the 70s and 80s, movies that had like full-on boobs and sex scenes, they were like, oh, PG. It's fine. This one's rated R.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh no.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Is it like Lizzie Borden's Revenge, like full frontal everything?
There's multiple women with boobs.
But just boobs or?
Oh yeah, not full frontal. Like
okay,
that,
yeah, because I got full frontal with all that stuff.
You got the
bikini. Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
No, you're good.
Back to this.
So this has a 4.7 rating on IMDb. So, not terrible.
Not good either.
But also not terribly great. And I agree with this, I think. Even watching it the second time, like the first time I was like, oh my god, what? But maybe I'll talk about that more. Anyway, so yes, it was made in 1988, and I just wanted to make the note of saying that, like, oh my god, was it made in 1988? Because they had like the curly mullety hair and the big bangs, and like all of the frat guys wore like polos underneath like sweater vests, and like it was so bad. I'll say that a lot, I'm sure. But anyway, so the beginning of the movie opens on a black background and some credits, but not too many. It wasn't bad. The piece de resistance was the first sound we heard was a toilet flushing. And, I just feel like every movie should start out with a flushing toilet. Like it just set the scene. Did you have something to
No,
add?
well, just other than like that right there was its establishing tone of the whole movie.
And it's so fitting.
Yeah.
It's just toilet trash. Yes, okay. So there's some more credits, and we hear like water running, they're brushing their teeth, and it finally shows a college-aged guy who is putting shaving cream on his face, and he's starting to shave. And then behind him, you can tell that it's like a dorm-style bathroom, like it's very, not public, but, open and shared. And we see these guys behind him creeping into the bathroom, and they've got full, like, ski masks and sunglasses on. And they sneak up behind him and grab him and, like, kidnap, quote unquote. Yeah. For hazing, obviously. And he drops his razor, and it like slow motion dramatically drops into the sink. And they carry him downstairs, and they have him like up on their shoulders, and he looks happy. Yeah. He's like, yes, let the hazing commence. Yeah. Which like I kind of get to a point, but like also hazing is fucking stupid. Yeah. I hate it so much.
Also, if you were the person that like had to do all the hazing, like, okay, well, fucking now go lift this guy, carry him down some stairs. Like, right? Fuck no, bitch. I
mean, you're so pumped full of adrenaline. Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, do it.
I don't know though. Everyone's all like, yeah, brotherhood, sisterhood, and I'm just like, I'm happily married and hanging out in my house.
I'm good. I didn't even stay in college.
No,
so.
I didn't even go to college. Does that make a lot of sense to you people now?
Yeah.
So
no, you don't need to go to college. It's fine.
Go to a trade school.
Yes. So they bring him out the front door and they tie him up to a tree. Okay. And they start throwing like fruit, raw eggs, toilet paper, like everyone. There's a bunch of guys in there cheering. And then there's a sorority house right next door. And it's like this same Greek symbols. And so it's like the little sisters and the big brothers or whatever. And they come out carrying flowers and they like put them at his feet. And they're all like, yay, it's Rush Week, and we're so happy that you're pledging and blah.
But how much toilet paper and rotten food and eggs and shit do you need to go through? Because like most of the time these houses are getting like rushed by like 10, 15 guys at a time. Right. And if you're doing this to every fucking guy, fuck that.
I'll explain that they're not.
Oh, okay, all right. But like most places, like
no, for sure.
Yeah.
So they throw stuff at him, right? And it's like 30 seconds. They're like, tie him to a tree, throw shit at him. And then the like head guy like holds up his hands and everybody stops. And he hands a knife to the girl and she goes and cuts him down. And then we figure out that it's his girlfriend and they start like making out on the tree.
Gross.
But it was just like...
Does he still have shaving cream on his face?
Oh. I would think he should, but I don't specifically remember. That could be a continuity error. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he was like, yeah, let's go do this shit.
Maybe. They're like, hey, wash your face off, man. We'll take you downstairs.
They're like, kidnap him. Oh, shit. Okay, you can
clean up a little bit. You can, like, finish shaving.
Dude, we're going to be throwing rotten eggs at you and shit, okay? Like, you be clean for this. Like,
your girlfriend's going to cut you off the tree, so, like, come on. Freshen up a little bit.
Come on, man.
But it was just weird how quickly it was. It was like, let's tie him to a damn tree for 10 seconds and then cut him back off.
And my other thing, too, is that they're always like, cut the ropes. And you're like, fucking untie that shit. Like, ropes are...
Well, and I legit was like, can we get some scissors? Because she was like cranking it, like, right next to his arm. Yeah. I was like, there's plenty of tree to go around, huh? So she starts kissing him, and, you know, we're like, yay, you are a person.
Rush. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the next scene, we're in the basement of the frat house, and there are 6 new pledges down there. Okay. And the head guy, who is a brother, his name is JD. Okay. And he's talking about how his brother Rex, who was the guy, is now the president of the fraternity. Okay. So that was his hazing to become the president, not his hazing into the fraternity.
Oh, so he's all... Okay. All right. He's already one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this part, I don't know, it was weird. I think it was just kind of like, we need a way to give them context, but it was dumb. But all set up to, like, the dynamic between them is very, like... You know, the experiment they put on where people they were like normal people and they split them up and they were like, you be prison guards and you be prisoners. Oh, yeah. And they treated them like shit. Yeah. Like, that's what this was. Okay. And they were like the officers and the scum and like they couldn't talk unless they were spoken to and like, it was very like aggressive. Yeah. Like, and I get that that's kind of how it is, but... Still. Anyway, JD asks one of the pledges if he knows who Rex's girlfriend is, because apparently they're supposed to know all of the fraternity brothers' names, all of their girlfriends' names, the sorority they're in, and where they came from. Why? Don't know, but they're supposed to know that.
Dude, I can't even fucking tell you where half of my staff come from, and I only have like 6 staff. Yeah. Like, I know like 2 of them are from
And they've had like mixers, so like they've gotten to know each other. Yeah. But like, that's a lot of information.
That's a lot
How
of
many boys are in a fraternity?
Yeah.
And their girlfriends in sororities. Yeah. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy that he asked is like, I think her name is this, but I'm not really sure. And so JD tells him that he's wrong. And then another pledge pipes up, and his name is Larry. He's like the main guy. And he was like, oh, her name is Wendy so-and-so, and she's from here, and she's in this sorority. And JD was like, well, that's not right. And he was like, I'm sorry, sir, but, like, I know her, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. And he's like, well, it's not right to show up a sorority, or a fraternity brother, so drop and give me 50. And you're like, oh, so that's the dynamic.
Oh, okay.
You can't win.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So he's doing push-ups, and JD goes on to talk about how they're about to start Hell Week, and that's where they go through all of these unique situations to form the bonds of brotherhood and loyalty and all that bullshit. Yes. And as he's talking, we hear this, like...
date rapes and whatnot.
Right? We hear this crazy wailing that, like, turns into maniacal laughing from somewhere in the house.
Okay.
And all the pledges are just like, what is that?
Yeah. Is it a ghost?
Right. No. JD explains that it's one of the brothers named Dan who's making this noise, and that he has been acting really strange lately because he has a brain tumor.
Oh.
Yep. And he's like, well, he's getting surgery next week, but he's going to act pretty strange. Like, the brain tumor affects his perception and his behavior. And so he's going to be acting really weird, but he gets surgery next week, so that's fine. And he's like, he deserves your loyalty because he's a brother and you got to be nice to him.
Okay, but if he's going to be getting surgery soon and it's affecting him this much, why aren't his family, like,
why is he here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't he be at home?
Yeah. And, like, all the other frat brothers went home for the weekend, but JD's like, he's staying here because he needs the support of his brothers. Like, he needs medical support.
Yeah, he needs medical support. If it is that much, like...
Yeah.
He should be being watched and shit. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
There's also, like, a side note, like, we're going to slip this information in, that the little sorority sisters that are here over the weekend are going to be, like, cooking for them. Because I guess that's, like, their duty. Like, they go out and get the groceries and cook the food.
Well, it's the 80s.
Yeah. I was like, okay, cool. The next scene is the guys eating at a big dinner table in their fancy-ass frat house. And they're all, like, chatting, and, like, the conversation sounds fine and friendly, and then Dan comes in and sits at the table, and all of the chatter, like, goes quiet, and they're all kind of like, the crazy guy.
Yeah.
And one of the brothers, whose name is Chip, he's kind of like the second in command, like, almost like a sidekick, but he has just as much authority as anyone else, kind of a thing. And he's like, hey, Dan, I heard you're staying here for the weekend, so you get to see all of the, like, awful Hell Week stuff that we get to do to these pledges, ha ha ha, you know. And Dan just, like, throws his head in his hands and is, like, sobbing at the table. And so they're all kind of like, what do we do? Okay. And Larry is sitting next to him, so he's like, hey, Dan, is everything okay, buddy? And Dan just grabs his plate and, like, flips it over on the table so his food goes flying. And so they all just kind of sit there. And JD's like, well, what do you do? Go ahead, clean up his food. And so they're all just kind of, like, picking it up with their hands. And Wendy comes over, and she, like, puts her hands on his shoulder, and she's like, I know you're going through a tough time, buddy. Like, everything's gonna be okay. Like, we'll get through this. We still love you. And he, like, turns into her like he's gonna hug her, and then he pushes her up against the wall and starts, like, thrusting at her. And some of the guys who were close by, like Larry, starts to, like, move to go into action, and JD's like, it's Rex's girlfriend, let him take care of it. I'm like, okay. Weird. And so Rex gets up and he's like, what's up? What are you doing, man? And he, like, grabs him and throws him toward the table that had otherwise paper plates and plasticware. There was a steak knife.
Oh, of course.
So he grabs the steak knife, turns around and stabs Dan in the side. Oh. I mean, not Dan. Rex.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're all freaking out, and Wendy, JD, and another brother who I think is named Tom carry him out to the car so that they can go to the hospital. And I just love that they're carrying him out there, and he's just hanging between their shoulders. I'm like, you're stabbed in the side. Yeah. That's not a good way to carry a person, first of all.
No.
But then they're like, oh, careful. And then they, like, toss him in the car, and then Tom, who is driving, is like, just don't bleed on my seats. Like, what?
Has anyone even tried to stop the bleeding?
No.
Okay.
There's still a knife just, like, sticking through his side. Yeah. No big deal.
Oh my gosh.
And then back in the dining room, the pledges are freaking out, and Larry asks JD if someone's gonna call the police, or Chip. He asked Chip, doesn't matter. And Chip is like, they're taking him into the hospital, so it's handled. We don't need to do anything. He's a brother, and he needs our help, so you can't tell anyone about this. And all the pledges are just like,
hey, yeah,
cool. And then the next scene, we see the car pull up to a restaurant called Greasy Tony's. Okay? Ew. So they pull up and park.
Why would you want that to be the name of your...
I don't know. They have, like, the Greasy Tony special. I'm like,
no,
thank you.
I guarantee you that's a lot of arm hair in that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So the car pulls up, and the three of them get out laughing and head into the restaurant. And JD talks about how Rex did such a great performance, and that Dan was such a good bad man. He's the best bad man they've had yet. So
all of that was fake?
Yeah. So Rex unzips his jacket and pulls up his shirt, and we see a bag of chicken blood taped to his side. So they just stabbed through the blood. But that's sketchy.
That's so sketchy.
That's way sketchy.
Really like...
Yeah. But it was all fake.
That would have to be like, wait, let me hang on to the knife, and then,
right?
You
like, let me take it from you and I will guide it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seemed really, meh. Yeah.
Okay.
So Wendy is like, guys, what happens if one of the pledges actually tells the police? Like, that's not going to be good.
Yeah.
And Rex is like, well, if they say anything, they're out. And like, what are we going to be charged with? Practical joking? I'm like, well, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a mental, like, you know how you can like sue someone for like mental stress or whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe that's a thing. I don't know.
Probably not back in the 80s.
So the next scene is back at the frat house, where Chip is talking to the pledges, and they're like lined up in front of him like soldiers. And he's like talking about how Hell Week starts later that night, and they're supposed to go back to their homes or their dorms and pack their bags because they're going to be spending the weekend there. And he's like, if you survive Hell Week, you'll be initiated into the fraternity. And
I just see that's the other shit that I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't do it.
No.
I mean, you want me to do jumping jacks for an hour maybe. But like if you're gonna fucking throw rotten food at me and like tie me up and leave me in a basement and shit, like no, I'm good.
Yep.
You want me to circle all the areas on my body that are fat? You don't have a pen with enough ink, honey.
Gosh.
So like
yeah, there were a few different times to this movie and I'm like, what? Why would you stay? Why are you doing this? Why?
Because it's the brain
tradition.
Yes, it's tradition and the brainwashing and the...
I hate it. So after he tells them all to leave and get back there by 8 o'clock sharp, right? And it shows Larry at his house and he's out front chopping wood when his mom pulls up. And he tells her that he's going to go back to the home after he packs a bag and he's going to stay at the frat house for Hell Week. And she's like, didn't the college like abolish hazing and there's a state law against it? Like, I don't feel good about this. You shouldn't be doing this. And she's completely right.
Hazing all the way back then?
I guess.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, there's a good reason for it too.
Yes.
She tells him that, it's dangerous and she doesn't like it. And he was like, well, it's tradition. Like, we're going to get something out of it. And she was like, what are you going to get out of it? And he's like, well, that's what we're going to figure out. That's what we're going to figure out through the hazing. I'm just like, no.
No, you get nothing out of that.
Yeah.
You get nothing.
And then she was like, do you know why your fraternity occupies that house? He's like, oh, it's been there forever. And she's like, no, it's been there since the 70s. And before that, there was a different frat there who accidentally killed a boy by hazing him.
Oh.
Yeah. And that they were disbanded and that's why his fraternity moved in there.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, oh, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
But I'm still going anyway.
Yeah.
So he packs and goes back to the frat house and Hell Week has begun. So JD has the pledges lined up like soldiers in a boot camp, like I said.
Who was he talking to one more time?
His mom.
His mom.
Yeah. And he lives in town, so he's from town and like he gets a lot of shit for being a townie because lame.
Yeah, why are you local?
Yeah,
like,
dumb. You went to school at your local school. Dumb.
Even though we decided to go to this school too, like fucking losers.
Right?
Fucking losers.
Yes. They just basically go through like the whole like you can't speak until you're spoken to and you're scum and you're like lower than the dirt of the earth and all of this lovely stuff. And they announced that tonight's challenge is the cherry race.
Okay.
So the next scene is the cherry race and all of the boys are in jock straps.
Okay.
And there are blocks of ice on either side and a cherry on top.
Okay.
And they have to bend over with their buttock cheeks and pick up the cherry and then carry it across and drop it and then the next person carry it. So it's like a relay type thing. And whoever does it the most wins.
Okay.
So after the race, they have like the winning team and Chip puts the 2 cherries on a pillow and is like, now the losing team captain has to eat the spoils of war. I was like, oh my God.
No.
Ew. Yeah. And so he goes up to the captain and he's like about to eat them. And then JD walks up behind the other 2 teammates and he's like, wait a minute. Are you really going to let your team captain eat those cherries for you? And they're like, sir, no, sir. And so they go to start eating them. And then the captain of the winning team is like, I'll take it one for the team, sir. I'm so great. And they're like, oh, yes, here is the real winner because he volunteered to eat the cherries. And then JD turns and he's like, but the other two teammates on the winning team didn't volunteer, so they're the losers and they get to eat the cherries. And they do.
So there's just absolutely no winning whatsoever.
You just get to eat some ass cherries.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Ugh. Can you even imagine? These boys were hairy. Can I just put that out there?
It was the 80s.
Woo. Yeah, it was.
I feel like everything was hairy back then.
Yeah.
Not that things aren't hairy nowadays, but like...
It was hairier back then.
There was a lot more hair back then.
Yeah.
I watched that birth video in high school. Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah, we don't want... Yeah.
of hair.
But yeah, there was a lot of talk of like doing it for the brotherhood and for the loyalty and, all that fun stuff. And it was just funny because every time the boys were humiliated, the brothers would be like, meh! Like they did the most stupid, evil laughs ever. It was so dumb.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So after the challenge is over, JD's like, well, we want to let you guys blow some steam off. Like, you need a little bit of a celebration. So tonight we're having our annual pig party. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay, so for the listeners who might not know, it is where the fraternity brothers and the pledges compete to bring the ugliest date to the party. Mm-hmm. And like, fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah. And then Chip adds that in order for them to remember how low status and subservient they are, they're going to have a string tied to their, quote, little weenies. And there's like a string that it comes up your pants and up your shirt. And then they're going to have something hanging out of their shirt as a symbol of their low status. And one of the pledge brothers is like, well, what do we do if someone asks about it? Like, that's embarrassing. And JD was like, all you're allowed to say is pull it and find out. No, that's not nice. So the next scene is at this big party, and they're at a bar, but the bar is in the house. So I don't know, it was like a legit like bar. Like they had a stripper who had to be at least 50. And she took her top off, and Tony was like, this is on YouTube? And I was like, yes, it is.
It was on YouTube?
It was on YouTube. I'm so
free?
glad I didn't rent it and pay money for it.
Oh, man.
Yes. Yeah, she had some tiggle bitties. And it shows a few of the pledges who are hanging out with their girls, and like they're all, chubby and ugly girls and whatever. And
girls are like 10 pounds more than
yeah. There was one who was like hefty, but the rest of them were just like normal.
Yeah.
It was dumb. But even then, like, no, stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it shows, the different girls go through and ask what it's for. And so they have to yank it. Oh, it's a corn cob. It's like a bare corn cob hanging on a string.
Okay.
So they yank on it and it, pulls the junk and it's painful. And so they're all like agonized. And I'm just like, why? Why? Like, why does that show your low status?
Yeah.
Because it's embarrassing and painful?
Yeah.
And funny, I guess, to the other brothers who are watching. I don't know.
That doesn't mean low status to me. That just... Yeah. Like, if they were like, oh, no, it's just one more haze, I'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
But to explain it as a low status.
Yeah, like, put a dick balloon hat on their head or something. Like, that's real. Embarrassing.
That's embarrassing,
I don't know.
No, this corn on the cob shit doesn't mean low status. It means low IQ coming up with that shit.
Right?
Dumbass bitch.
Makes me wonder, like, how long that's been around.
Yeah.
Like, who came up with that?
Is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
I've never heard of it, but
we should fucking find
I don't hang out with those people. No. So,
I hang out with people. I hang out with you.
And then it shows these two guys who have found a pretty girl, and they're like sitting on either side of her and like touching, and they've had a few drinks. And JD comes over and he's like, why don't you take the girls up to the boom boom room? Single girl, 2 guys, 1 girl. And she's all for it. And so they go upstairs, and the next scene they're like both standing awkwardly by the door, and she's like sitting on the couch with her shirt unbuttoned and like her bra and stuff, and they're like, oh no, you go first, that's totally fine, go ahead, man, you go first. No, you go first. And she's like, hello.
Yeah, she's like, I don't care who goes first, so let's just do this.
Yeah. And so they eventually both sit down and start like kissing and touching on her, and there are boobs, and it's a very long scene. And I would like this movie so much better if there weren't so many boobs and awkward boob scenes.
They gotta throw that in there because they think that the movie can't stand on its own.
I would have liked it so much better.
Yeah.
But, maybe that's just me.
And listen, I can handle a boob scene.
Yeah,
like, I can, but they gotta, like, it's gotta be important.
Yeah.
Like, it's gotta have a reason, like, it's just...
No, these were just boobs for boob's sake.
I hate it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Stupid.
There was a lot of them.
All it does is take away from the movie.
Yep.
So,
and then over the next couple minutes, it shows a montage of people at this party, like, making out like you do in movies.
Yeah.
Like
the big open mouth.
Yeah.
I was like, babe, have you ever seen these on movies? And he was like, yeah. I was like, try it with me. And it was so awkward. We almost like smacked teeth together. And I was like, no thanks. I don't need a broken tooth over nonsense kissing.
No.
Like,
no,
nonsense
there are ways to get passion in there without just like,
yeah.
So, yeah. So it's like kissing and making out and touching and like boobs and rubbing and just like everything for like literally probably maybe a minute or two. Yeah. But still, it feels like a long time in movie.
It's a long time.
It is. So they have their pig party. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, JD, Chip, and the pledges are in the living room. And over the fireplace are some spanking paddles that the pledges have made.
Yeah.
And JD is like, hey, Goodman, which is one of the pledges. And he's like, take down this paddle. And so he takes it down and he's looking at it. And JD's like, do you think it's up to par? Like, do you think that's a fine made paddle? And he's like, well, this isn't the one that I made. And he was like, I know. Answer my question. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, no, sir. It's definitely, like, it's not very good craftsmanship and, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, well, if you don't think so, put it in the fire. And so Goodman goes to put in the fire and JD pulls it out and he's like, that's the wrong answer because just because this brother isn't very crafty doesn't mean you have room to judge him. I'm like, you really cannot win.
No, you really can't.
You're just fucking screwed.
Also, those paddles would be a lot better if you drilled a couple holes through them because then there's less wind resistance.
That's
and you
true.
Just,
and I don't think they had that.
It's like a wiffle ball.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah. So, you know.
But yeah, we find out that it was Larry's paddle, so he's kind of like, that's my paddle.
Yeah.
I made that paddle.
Like, I haven't made a paddle, and I can make a better paddle than all.
Right.
So, like...
But then Goodman is told to assume the position.
Oh.
So he has to get down on his hands and knees and pull his pants down, and they paddle him, and he's like, thank you, sir, may I have another, sir? Like, they do it like 3 or 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then they hear some of the girls come into the house, and so they're like, okay, you can stand up. We don't need the girls to see you like this.
Uh-huh.
Like, thank you for your
generosity. Why would you want to be a girlfriend of one of those assholes?
I don't know. I legitimately have no idea.
I don't understand girls from the 80s.
Right? Oh, we're on page 3 of 8.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. Okay.
Okay.
The next scene is Larry helping Wendy set the table in the dining room, and he comments that she seems pretty chill for somebody whose boyfriend just got stabbed yesterday.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, well, I'm just here to serve the fraternity, and this is what Rex would have wanted me to do.
Is he dead?
That's what Larry says. He's like, is he okay? Is he even alive? Mm-hmm. He's like, none of the brothers will even talk about him or ask about him. Like, it's kind of weird. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It was just a surface wound. And he's like freaking out. He's like, surface wound? He got stabbed. Yeah. And she like can't help herself from laughing. Uh-huh. And then she was like, okay, it was all a prank. And then she goes on to tell him about how every year the brothers pick a bad man to terrorize the pledges and act crazy. Uh-huh. And she's like, but don't worry, they would never actually hurt you. Like, they're not going to do anything to hurt you.
So Dan's not really actually crazy?
No.
Okay, good.
Supposedly. And then Chip comes in at that point, and he's like, Larry, why aren't you, or whatever his last name, Bonner, I think. He's like, why are you in the kitchen scrubbing potatoes with the rest of the pledges, whatever, and he gets in trouble for being in there, and he runs out. Mm-hmm. The next scene is the pledges swearing with his hand on a book, like it has the Greek symbols on it, and he's like, I swear I didn't write it down because it doesn't matter. Yeah. And then he's told to assume the position again. So he takes his pants down and he gets blindfolded. And we see them pull a branding iron out of the fire.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And then Dan brings in this big bucket of ice.
Oh, no.
Yep. But it's okay.
Okay.
We'll listen to this.
Oh.
Dan pulls the branding iron out of the ice bucket. Oh. So he brands the pledges, and then JD sticks the hot branding iron in the ice so that it sizzles. So it's just a trick. Yeah, but still, that'd be really cold. Yeah. And it shows the other pledges who are waiting down in the basement, and it's like covered in like nasty graffiti, like "fuck this" and P word that, and like all this stupid, college boy
shit.
Yeah. And they're just sitting on like their little bare mattresses that they have to sleep on for the weekend. And they're talking about questioning if all of this is even worth it. Like, what are we doing, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the guys is like, well, my father was in this fraternity and he would disown me if I didn't pledge to this, you know, like it's an opportunity and all of this stuff. And then one of the pledges asks Larry what his father thinks about fraternities because he's a local. And he was like, well, my dad's dead, actually. And they were like, oh, man, sorry. Like, did you get to know him very well? And he was like, no, he died before I was born and, you know, whatever. And then Chip comes down and asks who of the pledges is going to be next. And Larry volunteers to go. So he takes the oath or the pledge or whatever and he gets down on his hands and knees. And before they blindfold him, Dan makes a point of like showing him the branding iron that's all hot and stuff. And he goes back behind and then JD carries in the ice bucket. And JD grabs the ice brand and he puts it against Larry's skin. And then Dan is like, and he brands him with the real thing.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And so JD starts freaking out. He's like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
And Chip is like, no, let's keep it quiet. It's fine. This'll give something for like the other pledges to be scared about. It's fine. I'm like,
no.
Okay.
No, that's not fine.
Yeah.
Dude, I barely get nicked with my curling iron. And I'm like,
fucking shit.
Oh, the world's coming to an end.
That shit hurts.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine. Like the next day, he's like, like every time he sits down.
Oh my gosh.
That would suck so much.
Oh my gosh. Sue worthy right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Larry's mom shows up at the house next.
Okay.
And he gets a lot of shit about that, as you can imagine, because it's mommy shows up in the house.
Yeah.
So he goes down to talk to her and she's like, I'm just worried about this Hell Week stuff. Like, this is not cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, Mom, it's all a game. I've got it figured out. Like, I'm just going to go through it and be part of the fraternity. And like, all these successful people have been part of fraternities before. Like, it's a good thing. And he was like, doesn't it tell you anything that all of these like senators and business owners have been frat boys? And she was like, let me tell you something. Let me tell you about the boy who died. And then she like pauses as it like fades to a flashback. Yeah. So it's the previous fraternity back in the 60s. And they're...
Is it the 60s or the 70s?
The 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said 70s before.
Yeah. Because that's when the new fraternity took over.
Okay.
Yeah. So the brothers are standing around a big bathtub. And they're wearing white robes with hoods. Okay?
Oh,
First of all.
Okay.
And they're concocting a big mixture in the bathtub of cornflakes, coffee grounds, soda pop, and vinegar. So it's supposed to be like nasty, but like harmless.
Yeah.
Right? And they show one of the pledges, and she says that her boyfriend Sid was up first, and that's him. And we see him reading off his oath, and then he's blindfolded, and he gets led to the bathtub. And on his way over there, like, just to make sure you know that he's a real hippie, he's like, which way to the protest? Oh, you're a hippie. It's the 60s. Yeah.
They call him Sunshine, too? Is that
so they lead him. He was wearing a big peace sign necklace, so, you know.
I don't need anything else besides the big peace sign to know.
No, that's how you know.
Yep.
So they lead him up to the bathtub, and they turn him around, and they, like, lower him into it, and he immediately starts, like, screaming and thrashing. And they're all kind of like, wait, like, what is happening? Like, nothing is supposed to be happening. And so they're just like looking around as he's screaming, and it shows a bottle on the counter that legit looks like an apothecary, like Michael's potion bottle.
Yeah.
And it says muriatic acid. And it's like foaming and steaming. And so someone accidentally put that in the tub.
Accidentally.
Like, how? Yeah, that's not an accident.
No, do you not read?
Grabs the potion bottle.
Yeah.
Off of the counter, and we're like, dump this in with the cornflakes.
Yeah.
No.
Also, why? How did they have that?
I
mean, I get it's college.
Maybe it's like, you know, the chemistry department.
Yeah.
Haha, let's go get some plutonium. Yeah. I don't know.
Fucking no. Like,
no idea.
You don't just get muriatic acid. Okay.
I don't even know what it is, but apparently it does things.
Oh yeah, no, it's bad shit.
Oh, you know about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
a lot of true crime shit.
No, true.
So.
Oh, is that the stuff that you like pour on bodies so they just dissolve?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
You can also do it with lye too.
Oh, good. Yeah.
No, it's hard to get lye though.
She says that Sid died the next day in intensive care, and the frat was disbanded. And then she says that this fraternity that he's in, or trying to get into, was founded, and they moved into the house in 1970, which is the same year that he was born. Mm-hmm. Larry was born. And Larry's like, you're being overprotective. Like, it's not the same fraternity. Nothing bad is going to happen. Like, don't worry. And then she leaves. In the next scene, we're back in the basement where the boys are doing a new challenge. The boys are in teams of 2, and one of them is lying on their back, and the other one is planking. And as soon as the one who's planking drops to the ground, the other one gets a full raw egg sat into their mouth, and they have to chew it. Like, yeah,
with the
shell and all.
With the shell.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do the cherry shit 6 times over before I would do that.
Yeah. Would you want to eat the cherry, though?
I would eat the cherry. I'd eat the fucking cherry, man. Fuck that. No, man. Ugh.
So Larry and his teammate Goodman are the last team going, but you can tell that he's like getting shaky. Goodman is the one doing the plank. And you can tell he's getting shaky and he's going to drop, and JD's like, "Okay, Larry, as soon as he hits the floor, like, you're getting that egg in your face, you know?"
Do they have to, like, is it a timed thing? Like, if they
it's
drop...
just as long as you go.
So then, either way, you're getting the egg.
So
then I would just drop immediately. Right? You're like, fucking, you get the egg. Sorry, dude.
Sorry,
like,
yeah. But you're supposed to be fighting for your brother. You're not supposed to subject him to that.
But it's going to happen either way.
I don't know. There might have been a time limit, but none of them got to it if there was. But it didn't seem like they were timing it.
It's fucking lame ass, can't do a plank for whatever guys. Like,
but Larry, being the smart little egg that he is, moves under Goodman. So he doesn't touch the floor when he collapses. Oh. And Chip is like, "You can't do that." And JD's like, "No, that's innovative. I'm going to let it slide." Okay.
Well, good job, Larry.
Right. We then see the girls who are in the kitchen, and they're preparing the next challenge. Mm-hmm. They are rubbing anchovy paste all over a banana. And they're kind of just chatting about, like, oh, what lesson are they going to learn with this? Like, that's gross. Mm-hmm. And Wendy's like, apparently it's like obedience or something. And they're just like messing around. And then we see JD place the banana in the toilet. And he brings in one of the pledges blindfolded. And they're like, you have to eat the turd if you want to be a brother. Take a bite of the turd. Ha. And so he like goes to bite it. It's just one of the no-name people.
At least it's not a real turd.
It's true. But a banana with anchovy paste?
Yeah, no. But I feel like there's a lot of fraternities that would have been like,
true.
Eat the turd.
Yeah. So he like puts his head down and he like goes to take a bite, and then he pulls it back. And then he goes to take a bite, and so Chip like shoves his face in the toilet. I'm like, that's how people drown.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to chill out. But he ends up taking a bite of the turd.
Yeah.
And he's able to go free or whatever. And then the next challenge is with this other guy who I also don't know the name of. And there's a bowl of like squirming worms. And he has to eat a worm. And Chip is like, do you know why we're feeding you worms, you person? It's because when we asked you what you would do to an enemy fraternity brother without killing them, you said you would feed them bugs. And the other guy said he would make them eat shit. Oh. So they're using those against them. And so Dan comes up behind him and like holds his head back. And so this guy has to eat a worm. And then JD comes up and pours a full-ass jar of honey on his face. And both Tony and I were like, you can suffocate a person doing that.
Oh, yeah,
like,
you can.
What? Yeah. So they dump it on his face, and then they dump live roaches on his face. And while he's like screaming, they like take a picture, and they're like, ha ha, memories. No. Yeah.
Cherry shit.
Yeah. And Dan is still holding him, so he can't move. He just has like roaches in honey on his face.
And they're like stuck to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and they're like they're moving. You can see them alive.
They were real roaches too?
I think so. I mean, I guess they could have not been, but it seemed pretty real. Oh, man. And then it goes back to the kitchen where they're concocting another challenge. And this time it's like a smoothie drink that's like stinky cheese and cod liver oil and raw eggs and just like a nasty ass drink.
Okay, when we did I don't know if you remember with like the Sadie Hawkins dance, when we did like the Fear Factor thing, all we did was take a Happy Meal and blend the whole thing together.
Oh, yeah.
And like that was gross enough to me, okay? Because like there was pickles and shit in there, like, but like...
I'm pretty sure what was in the cups was chocolate milk though, because one time like one of them was drinking it and lifted up the glass and there was like a dark spot on the bottom, so I'm like, it's just chocolate milk. But it's a movie, so obviously it's fake.
Obviously they're not going to be like, yeah guys,
drink this awful thing.
You want to be in a movie?
You want to vomit in a movie? So JD brings all the drinks down to the basement, and he says that the guys have to drink all of the whole glass. And he's like, we're going to be listening for, like, a flushing of the toilet or sinks being, drained or whatever. So you have to drink these. Like, that's the only way you get to be a brother. And they leave, and they're like, we'll be back in an hour to check on you. And so all the guys are like, there's not even windows to dump this out. Like, what do we do with this nasty thing? And they're, like, sniffing it and, like, gagging and stuff. And one of them's like, okay, we just need to be men. We just need to drink it. Like, let's fucking do it. And so they're like, to the fraternity! And they drink them. And I was so fearful that they were all going to vomit. But luckily they didn't.
That's good.
So that's good.
That's good.
And then they're like, let's just call it a night before they can come back with anything else for us to do. So the next morning, JD is in the basement with the pledges again, and he is now in a hooded white robe. And he's standing in front of an altar. Cool. And there's, like, candles around, and there's, like, 2 cow skulls, like, with the horns, on the back. And I'm like, you got that from TJ Maxx.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, like, cut back and forth with this scene. But essentially, on his side, he's going over, like, the history of fraternities and, like, brotherhood and all of this weird stuff, and I did not follow it at all. And neither did these guys, because they were, like, half falling asleep.
Yeah. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, fraternities can be a really great thing for people. Like, they really can. Like, sororities and shit, they really can.
Yeah, but most of them...
But stop being nonsense is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like...
Oh, so in one of the cutscenes, it shows one of the other brothers, Tom, who is headed to the bathroom. And before he gets there, it shows a close-up of the toilet. And the lid opens because a hand is pushing it up from the inside. Okay, so a hand comes out of the toilet and lifts the lid. Okay. And it's got, like, a little, like, half glove, like a fingerless glove situation on. And you're like, okay.
How did that even...
Good question, right? Yeah. So Tom comes in, and he sits on the toilet, and he starts looking at a nudie magazine, which they focus way too much on, so there are many a boob to be seen.
Yes.
And, he starts peeing, and there's, like, weird, like, music box music that plays, and at first I thought it was in the movie, because he starts kind of, like, looking confused, but then I don't think it was in the movie. So you're like, so what are you confused about?
So the music's just for us? Okay.
Yeah. And so he's just, like, confused, and then he goes back to his magazine. And then the camera pans down to, like, between his legs, but we can't see anything. And a hand comes up from, like, between his legs in the toilet.
How?
Yeah.
Were toilets, like, were the pipes bigger?
Nope. We'll get there.
Is what it goes?
So he sees this hand between his legs, and he starts screaming. And the guys hear it from the basement.
Justifiable.
Yeah. And so JD's like, hey, Chip, can you go check on the other brothers? Like, what's going on? And he continues to talk about how fraternities are so great and how many men have come from fraternities and the eternal bond and brotherhood and whatever. And we see Chip, who is searching the house, and he's like, Dan, Tom, like, anybody, what's going on? And he knocks on one of the bathroom doors, and there's a girl using it, even though, like, why? Maybe it's a girlfriend, I'm not sure. But she's, like, shaving her armpits naked in front of the sink, as you do.
As you do.
Guess,
in someone else's fraternity house,
And so the door's locked, and she is like, go use the other one. And then so he goes to the next bathroom, and he sees Tom lying dead on the floor. And there's, like, blood on his body and blood on the toilet.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
As he runs away screaming, the same hand pops up out of the toilet, covered in blood, and holds up a peace sign.
Okay. So it is a ghost. Okay.
So Chip runs through the house looking for anybody, and he runs into this room that it's like, it seems like it's the only room in the house with a phone, but there's like storage shelves and, like, a workbench with tools. And so you're like, what is this, like, garage?
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't know. It was a weird room. So he runs in there, and Dan comes in after him. And and Chip was like, oh my gosh, I just found Tom. He is dead on the bathroom floor. And, like, what's going to happen if the college finds out? They're going to disband us. And he's, like, more concerned about that side of things.
Yeah.
And Dan starts laughing, and he's like, wow, did you actually think that was real? I had you going for a little bit. Ha ha ha. And Chip is like, oh yeah, you did. Like, save that for the pledges, buddy. Ha 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 ha. And so Dan goes in and is, like, giving him a hug, and then he picks up 2 screwdrivers from the tool table and stabs Chip in the back. And then he grabs another screwdriver and a set of scissors and is just, like, stabbing this guy.
Okay.
Yes, and he's, like, laughing maniacally.
Okay.
And the guys in the basement can hear this, and JD just assumes that it's Dan being his crazy, Yeah. his bad man. And then we see Dan, who after he kills Chip is walking around the house with a stereo and he's like blasting rock music. And he goes up to the other bathroom, but the girl is in the tub and she's like, go away, I'll be out soon. Like, and
they had to fill up the time with boobs somehow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But he uses the screwdriver to break the lock. And so she starts freaking out and she like covers herself and she's like, what are you doing in here? Like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And he walks over, plugs the stereo in, and drops it in the tub.
Oh my gosh.
So she gets electrocuted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she dies for no fucking reason other than Dan be crazy.
Yeah. So she's screaming and Dan's laughing, and so they're like, wow, they even got the girls in on this like joke. Haha.
Wouldn't that like pop the fuses back then? Is that big of a house that they have?
Oh, maybe.
I feel like that would blow the electricity.
The lights do go out.
Oh, okay.
So that could be a thing.
That makes sense. I was like, no, that would have to blow a fuse like that.
Yeah.
At least pop one, you know?
Yeah. So JD continues to talk about like the symbolism behind the altar, and there's like a sword that he uncovers that's like the sword of Maniacles or some name I did not write down. And then there's also a coffin that represents something, but again, I was not following. I was just kind of like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like a big box. It's like not a coffin.
Anything's a coffin if you try hard enough.
I guess that's true. But yeah, I specifically put that I couldn't follow what he was talking about, and neither could the guys because they were dozing off. Then we see one of the other sisters who gets back to the house with some groceries. And Dan comes into the kitchen and she starts chatting to him. But it's like the kind of chatting where she like doesn't even take a break to let him speak. She's just like filling the silence, you know? And he is just kind of like mumbling answers, but she doesn't really care what he has to say.
Like, oh my gosh, it was raining so much today. Oh, did you see all that rain? Oh, it was ridiculous. And I just can't believe that, you know, I'm guessing we're going to get so much snow this winter.
Exactly. And like, she's like, aren't you glad to be almost done with being the bad man and all the pledges and like, she just like, exactly, kept going just like that. She goes to put on an apron because she's getting all this food out. And he's like, oh, let me help you with that. And he grabs the strings and like wraps them around her hands. And so she was like, oh, Dan. And he like pushes her up against a pole because there's like a stainless steel, like almost like island prep situation with a pole on the end. And so she thinks he's being like a little kinky kink.
Yeah, first guy.
Yeah. And she's like, someone's going to come in the kitchen. What are you doing? And he ties her to the pole, unzips her jacket, and it's, you know, it's a good thing she wasn't wearing a shirt or a bra.
Oh, yeah,
so it's just boobs out for Harambe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just boobs. And then he picks up an egg beater, like a single, it's not a double egg beater, it's just a single.
The single, yeah. Like the hand crank ones?
No, an electric one.
Oh, okay, just the...
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And we don't see it, but I'm guessing he puts it down her throat.
Oh, okay. I was thinking something else. Okay.
Oh, yikes. No. Yeah. Nope, down her throat.
Down
which
her
is
throat,
also
please.
not good.
Not good, but I'll take that.
Well, and at first he grabs her hair, and so I'm like, is he going to, like, rip her skull off?
Yeah,
like,
what is happening here? Yeah.
And then the guys hear Dan laughing some more, and JD's like, okay, I'm sick of this shit. I'm going to go up there and figure it out myself. I'll be right back. So he takes off his white robe and he starts walking around the house calling for Dan and Tom and Chip, and he walks in on the girl in the kitchen and he freaks out and runs, obviously. And he goes into that same weird tool room to get to the phone, and he sees Chip dead in there. And he tries to call the police, but the phone doesn't work, and that could make sense now if the fuse blew, that the phone wouldn't work. I didn't connect that. So good job.
I mean, Chip could have also... Or not Chip, Dan.
Dan.
Crazy Dan.
And then as he's like trying the phone, Dan walks in and hits him over the head with a bottle. So he passes out. The brothers hear Dan laughing, and one's like, maybe we should go check it out. Like, maybe they actually need help and something's going on.
Yeah.
And the other one's like, no, it's just a test, and Dan is just doing this to freak us all out, and we have to be confined to the basement until we become brothers. Like, we can't leave. And then it cuts to Wendy, who shows up with more groceries, and she finds her friend and sister, you know, sorority sister, dead in the kitchen. So she runs out screaming and comes down to the basement. And she's like, I found her dead, and she was tied up in the kitchen, and there's blood everywhere, and her face is all mangled, which it didn't look like, but maybe it was supposed to. And one of the pledges is like, it's gotta be Dan. He's so crazy. Like, it has to be. And Larry is like, well, I gotta confess something to you guys. Like, he doesn't have a brain tumor. This is all just a big joke. And Wendy was like, yeah, they pick a guy every year, you know? So the next scene is back in the tool room where JD has his hands tied up to a shelf, and his back is to the room. And he sees Dan, who is at the workbench, and he's like faced away from him, and he's like, hey Dan, what are you doing, man? Like, come on, this isn't funny. And Dan turns around and he goes, I'm not Dan, my name is Sid. And JD's like, hey, okay, like, this is all just a game, buddy. You're one of us, remember? And Dan pulls down JD's pants. And he's like, whoa, what are you doing, man? What are you, queer or something? He's like, okay, 80s.
Yeah. Right? No, that is, like, not the thing I would be worried about.
Right?
That, you know, like, I'm tied up.
Like,
Like,
in a tool room where someone is dead with screwdrivers in their back.
Yeah. That would not be my concern right there, is all I'm saying. Like,
yeah. So Dan pulls out a cherry bomb and is like, I was never one of you. And he puts the cherry bomb up JD's butthole. And is like, oh, you like the cherry race game so much? How about the cherry bomb game?
Oh, man.
And he pulls out a lighter and he's about to light the cherry bomb. But then he, like, pauses. And it's, like, from his point of view and it's kind of, like, shaky. And so I'm like, is this some kind of, like, internal struggle?
Yeah,
that was my thought.
Dan's fighting against, you know, like, Sid.
Yeah. But then he, like, falls back to the ground and grabs his stomach. And all of a sudden, a hand bursts from his chest.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And Sydney climbs up out of his body.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And it was pretty well done, I gotta say. Yeah. So he comes up out of his body. And we see that it's the same guy, obviously, but he has, like, burns and acid, you know, boils and stuff all over his face. So this is what Sid looks like.
Oh.
Yeah, so he has, like, a missing eye, and he's all hippied out.
Yeah.
So he comes up through the middle of the
Okay.
kid, and he goes, want a light? Like a cigarette light? And he shoots a flame at the cherry bomb.
Oh, just from his fingers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, you know, magic.
Because when you're a ghost, you can do magic and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the rule.
Yeah. Don't you know?
Yeah. So downstairs, the guys hear the cherry bomb go off. And they try to run upstairs, but the basement door is locked. And Wendy's like, I might have locked it when I came down the stairs. Sorry. So they're sitting down there with no way out. And they're talking about how, well, the rest of the brothers should be back Sunday, which is the next day. So we might just have to wait it out. But there's, like, no food or water or anything down there. And they're locked in. And then one of them's like, hey, Larry, maybe your mother will come back. Ha, ha, ha. And he's like, yeah, she doesn't like me being here, and I told her, you know, that I'm staying, so she's probably not going to come back.
Yeah. Also, I could only hope so.
Right? A couple of the guys talk about how his mom doesn't like the fraternities, but, like, they would be disowned if they didn't try to get in. And one of them is like, oh, he's like, yeah, but my mom's, like, a crazy hippie. Like, he makes a point of saying that. And one of them asks if his mom got remarried, and he's like, yeah. And the other one's like, okay, so what does Mr. Bonner do? And he was like, oh, Bonner is my mom's name. Like, I think I was conceived out of wedlock because that's what happened back in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh, so he's the son of Sid. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
That is not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
And then one of the guys is, like, leaning up against the coffin, and the lid slowly starts to open, and we see Sid's hand, like, reach over the top. And then he, like, breaks open the coffin, and he says, which way to the protest? So that must be, like, his
catchphrase.
Yeah.
Good morning, Sid. Which way to the protest?
Hey!
Hey!
Peace sign.
Man, Sid, what are you doing for Christmas? Which way to the protest?
Good old Sid.
Good old Sid.
So they run, and I don't even know what this would be. It kind of looks like a storage room. So it's like there's a door off of this main room that goes into the storage room, and then it's like chicken wire windows. Just chicken wire.
Okay.
So they're hiding behind this chicken wire, and two of the brothers stay in the room, and one of them tries to punch Sid, but Sid catches his hand, and he starts getting acid burns.
Oh.
And so the other one grabs...
See, that makes sense. That's a ghostly power I feel like you should be able to have, not shooting flames from your fucking fingertips.
I agree. Another brother grabs, like, the big sword of Diocles off of the wall, and stabs Sid, and all it does is cut him open. Like, it doesn't hurt him or do anything. And so... Sid reaches into said cavity and pulls out his intestines. And the guy's like putting his dukes up and he's like, come on, Sid, let's do this. Except he doesn't know his name, obviously. And he's like, let's fight this out. And Sid just strangles him with his intestines. Yep. So the guy falls to the floor dead, and Sid unzips his jacket, and he also isn't wearing a shirt underneath.
You know.
And he writes Sid across his chest with, like, his acid fingers. So... After that, he laughs, and he just kind of, like, fades away in a ghostly ghostness. And they all come out of the chicken wire room, and Larry sees Sid written across the chest, and he realizes that that's the guy who died. And so he tells the others that he was a guy who died in the house during Hell Week. And one of the other pledges is like looking at the dead brother and he's like, I think I'm gonna be sick. And he like backs away and starts grabbing his stomach and he falls to the floor and his stomach starts swelling and then it bursts and there are like innards and bugs. It's the guy who ate the bugs. So that's how he died. Yeah.
So you're telling me Larry's the son of Sid?
I'm not telling you nothing.
Okay, well that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
You think that.
Why else would the mom be like,
right.
I mean, I would expect both of my parents to have been like, no.
Yeah.
No, you're not doing any of that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then.
Yep. So
grody bugs, can I?
After the stomach bursts, the brothers grab an axe and a bat that are down in the basement and they start trying to chop down the door. But as one of them hits the door, there's like blood or acid or both that like spurts across the room. But they keep breaking down the door and they start running out. And one of the brothers, Richard, is like, I'm gonna go get a phone and call the police. Like I'm leaving the house to go get a phone. And as they're running up the stairs, we can see that like the walls are just splattered with blood at this point. So he runs out of the house and to the next door house, which is the sorority that all these girls are in. And he breaks in with the axe and he finds a phone. And it's a payphone inside the house. So weird.
That is weird.
Yeah. And he gets through to the police, but he starts telling them that this guy is trying to kill him, and that they need to come over to the frat house. And he's like, 2 guys are already dead. And the cop is like, okay, how did they die? And he's like, well, we cut him open, and he used his intestines to strangle them. And like this one had bugs that exploded from inside of him. And the police officer is like, okay, Richard, are you a pledge? And he's like, yes. And he's like, have you been given any LSD? And he's like, no, man, like, he's just trying to kill us. And he was like, if we come out to your house and there's been any hazing, we're going to have to make a report and it's going to be this whole big thing. So why don't you just sleep on it?
I would be like, no, fucking get here. Make your damn report.
Right? And that's basically what he says. He's like, 2 of my friends are dead and you want me to sleep on it? But then the police officer, I think, hangs up. And then we see...
This is why police have to respond to every call now,
Yeah.
which is good. But, like, I mean, they do have to respond to bullshit things. But, like...
But what if there is a demonic presence who is strangling you with his intestines?
Yeah, sometimes, though, I feel like the cop... Like, if I were a cop and I had to show up and they were like, yeah, it's a demon inside, I'd be like... peace, bro.
Yeah, no
like,
thanks.
call a priest.
Yeah.
Thanks. You know?
Get Ed and Lorraine over here.
Yeah,
because,
Ed and Lorraine. I'll call the Winchesters.
Deal.
Give them like 24 hours because apparently that's how long it takes them to get across country. So,
Makes sense.
You
Makes
know.
sense. That car can go pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
Larry and Wendy run to the front door and they open it, but Sid is standing right there. So Larry throws the door shut and he kind of like, puts his back against it like, whew.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's like knife like around his body. And so Wendy grabs him and they start running away and they run to the phone and they find Chip and JD dead in that room.
Is JD like exploded?
His butt is like covered in red.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We go back to see Richard, who like slams down the phone in the sorority house and he's all pissed off. But then he hears Wendy say, Richard, help me. And so he's like, what? And so he goes into the next room and Sid closes the door behind him and is like, hi, Richard, like in her voice.
Yeah.
And Richard hits Sid with the axe, but it does nothing, obviously. And Sid asks who this guy is, and he says his name, Richard, whatever, and Sid kills him. So back at the frat house, 2 of the pledges, Goodman and Bodine, I'm only naming them because it matters now, are walking through the house with a sword, and they're trying to find the other brothers. And they find Richard, who has been brought back to the house and is laying dead on the couch. And, like, his head is, like, everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. Still has a face, but not a head.
Well, yeah. I mean, Sid's got to bring him back to show him. I
right?
mean, he's not as menacing.
Gotta show off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're, like, freaking out. And I think Goodman vomits.
Ugh.
And Sydney walks up behind him, and then he's like, bummer, huh? He was like, okay, hippie.
Oh, my gosh.
So they run away. And then Wendy and Larry are running around the house, and they find a hiding spot.
I'm sorry, real quick. I bet Sid was the only one that enjoyed being in this movie.
Right?
Like,
that'd be pretty fun. The makeup would suck.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Wendy and Larry find a place to hide, and Sid is walking around the halls, like, looking for someone to kill. And he walks into the room, and he's, like, not really looking around, but he's doing that, like, I'm probably looking for someone, but I'm not going to actually look type thing.
Because I already know they're hiding under the bed.
Yeah, exactly. But then he hears Goodman, who's creeping through the halls, calling for Bodine. And so he goes out to get him. And Wendy and Larry start talking about how they need to kill this guy, but, like, we can't kill him because he's already dead. And Wendy's like, well, if he's been dead for 20 years, like, why did he pick tonight to come back? And Larry's like, maybe just no one else has seen him before this. Like, I don't know. And
I was gonna ask that. Like, why did he wait?
She's like, maybe he, like, why does he want to kill us for no reason? And so they're just, like, freaking out. And Goodman finds their hiding spot. And Larry asks if Richard got to a phone, and he's like, nah, man, he's dead. And he also tells them that Bodine is somewhere in the house hiding with the sword. And then Goodman tells Larry that he needs to go out and find a phone. And then he leaves the hiding spot. And so Larry tells Wendy that she needs to stay hidden while he goes out. And she's like, I'm not just going to sit here and let Sid get me. And then she's like, besides, I feel safe with you. Yeah. You're like, oh no. So they both sneak out. And then we see Goodman, who's still looking for Bodine. And he sees a figure laying underneath a blanket. And so he pulls off the blanket, you know, of course. And it's Sid.
Of course.
And he grabs his head and cranks it completely around.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would feel like, though, like, I would be the ghost being like...
Right? Here he comes, here he comes.
Shh, be quiet.
Yeah.
But, like, as a person, I would have been like, and kept walking.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to touch that.
Not touching
that.
No. And then as the ghost, I would have been like, fuck.
Damn it.
I
don't want to walk around.
So
I wanted you to come to me. But my favorite thing about this special effect is that it's like a cut shot. So one of the shots is him turning the head, and then the second shot is it going completely back around.
Oh, yeah.
So you know that he's facing forward with his shirt on backwards.
Yeah.
And then after the neck snaps, he drops to his knees. But it's like, he drops forward for him, but it should have been backwards.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't have been knees to drop to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I was just kind of like, your shirt's on backwards. But as Sid cranks his head around, Bodine, like, walks into the room and sees this. So he runs out and tries to find another way out of the house. And Sid follows him. And when Bodine tries to defend himself with the sword, Sid basically, like, walks up onto the sword and just pushes it through his stomach because it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And Bodine's hands are on the hilt, and so his hands go, like, into his body and start getting all boiled and whatever. And Sid asks what Bodine's name is, and so he says his name. And after that, he grabs Bodine's head and shoves it into the cavity.
Ugh.
So it starts, like, acid burning, yeah. But when he pushes him to the ground, like, his head is covered in guck, but it definitely doesn't look like he just had, like, flesh-eating acid.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So Larry and Wendy get out and they go to the sorority house next door and they get to the phone, but it doesn't work. And she's like, well, I think there's another phone upstairs. So they start to head that way, but then Sid comes through the front door and he's holding the sword now. So Larry tries to... I would have kept
running.
Right?
I'm like, why? No, I would have stopped.
Just keep going.
Fuck, it's a ghost. Who's gonna do what?
Right?
Keep running.
Yeah.
Keep running.
How are you safe?
Get to a church, salt circle,
True.
Fucking shit. Like,
yeah.
Come at me, ghost, in the church.
Larry tries to swing at him with a bat, but he vanishes and, like, appears in the next room. And so they, like, fight with bat and sword for a little while. I just said sword.
Sword.
And it was just, like, a very choreographed fight. And, like, there was one time Larry, like, went to hit Sid, and he, like, caught it with his hand and threw him off. And it was all just very, like, hit.
Yeah.
Hit. And I was like, come on, people. But yeah, they fight for a little bit until Sid manages to take the bat away. And he, like, throws it down on a chair, and it just, like, collapses into a bunch of pieces. It was kind of funny. And then he puts the sword up to Larry's throat, and he asks for his name. But before Larry can answer, Wendy comes in and sprays Sid with a fire extinguisher. And he, like, drops to his knees and has his head back in, like, anguish, and he freezes and seems like he dies. So Larry takes the sword and shoves it down Sid's throat. Like, sword swallowing situation. Wendy tells him that he needs to go into town to find a phone, and she's going to try the one upstairs. And he's like, I can't leave you. You're my responsibility now. First of all, no.
Second of all, she put that responsibility on you, so...
True, yeah.
Like...
And so she was like, well, the last time you told me to leave, I stayed, and it saved your life. And he was like, you're right. And then they kiss. Because, of course, that's what you do in the heat of the moment. Yeah. And he does leave the house to go get help, and she starts to head upstairs. And we see that Sid is not actually dead.
Of course not.
Because of course not.
Because he's a ghost.
And she makes it upstairs and she picks up the phone and it's kind of like a closer shot of her head. And we see Sid's hand reach over and stroke her hair. And in Larry's voice, he says, "You're so beautiful. All I want to do is touch you." And she's kind of like, "You're not supposed to be here." And she turns around and it's like a close-up of Sid's like yucky face. And she's like, "Oh no." And so she runs down the stairs. And I was like, "Oh man, she's gonna die." And Tony's like, "No, she can't die. We haven't seen her naked yet." And I was like, "Good point."
Yeah.
And then Sid grabs her and throws her down on the couch.
Oh, of course.
And she gets knocked out in the process, but I don't know how. It was just like she became unconscious. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he unbuttons her sweater and she's not wearing a bra because who does?
Of course not. I think, is that one of the rules of sorority? You want to be part of us? No bras.
Oh, maybe.
No bras.
Yep. I think so.
Forever. For the rest of your life.
No bras ever again.
Ever again.
Yeah, exactly. But luckily, right at that moment, Larry comes busting back in for reasons. For reasons. Obviously. Yeah. And he's like, "Okay, Sid, let's have it out. You and me. Like, we're done with this." And so Sid asks his name, and he's like, "I am Larry Bonner." And he's like, very dignified. And Sid puts his hand on his shoulder, and he says, "I only came back to protect you." And then he fades the fuck away. Okay?
No, you were just kicking him in the balls like 2 seconds ago. Like, that's not...
But he didn't know who he was. Because he is his father. Yeah. You were right. I just didn't want to tell you. So the last scene of the movie is Rex, the first president boyfriend. And he's in bed with a girl who is not Wendy. And he's trying to get her to sleep with him. And she's like, "I don't know. Like, what about Wendy?" And he's like, "Well, she went a little crazy." And she's like, "Well, like, getting help crazy? Yeah. Like, what do you mean?" And he's like, "No, she left me for a pledge. She must be crazy." So she went with Larry. Yeah. And then she's like, "I don't know, this place just gives me the creeps. Like, there were people murdered here." And he says that they found the guy who did the murders. And he's like, he's an ex-convict, like, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. We never find out who this guy is that they pinned these murders on.
I bet he was just some guy that was like, "Wait, I get like 20 years of just free meals?"
Oh, hell yeah.
I did it. Yeah, it was me.
Sign me up. But she says that the survivors haven't even identified him as the killer yet. So she's still like unsure and nervous. And this part fucking pissed me off. So he's like touching her, being all seductive, and she's in like panties and a jacket at this point. And he's like, I deserve something special for all I've been through, don't you think?
Heck no.
Like, he says that he lost his class to a maniac and his girl left him for a pledge, and, he's trying to be all cute, and I'm like, fuck you, dude.
Fuck you, dude.
No. But she's like, "Well, I guess." And so they start making out. And we see... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say, if you're that guy that's going to, like, pull that shit, fuck you. If
you.
You're that girl that's going to fall for that shit, like...
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't let a guy do that to you.
Yes.
Don't let a person do that to you.
Respect yourself.
I think that's another thing he said was like, I respect you. I'm like, fuck you, asshole.
You do not respect her.
Made me so mad.
I'm sorry, where's dinner and drinks, first of all? Okay.
Yeah. But he unzips her jacket, and of course,
boobs.
Nothing underneath but boobs, yes.
And why are they all in jackets?
It's like their sorority jackets. Oh, okay. They're zip downs kind of a situation, yeah. And then we see, like, we're looking through the camera, like first person point of view, someone walking up the stairs, and we see them having sex in the bed, and it's like one of those loft beds that's way up high, and there's like not a bunk bed underneath type of situation. And
also, don't degrade yourself to having sex in a loft.
No.
That's weird, man.
That's like one step above bunk bed, but like not really at all.
With the bunk mate in the bed.
Yeah, like. For real. So we see the sword from the frat house, like from, first person point of view. And then we see that Sid is holding it.
Okay.
And he walks up underneath the bed and he says, "Out of sight." And he laughs, and then it cuts before we get to see him stab them. But I assume he stabs them.
Yeah.
Because he's an asshole.
Not
Sid. Rex. And if you have a name like Rex. Yeah. Rex, Chip.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
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 The first 40 minutes was just hazing. Like, nothing scary happened for the first half of the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And honestly, like, it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. I had to watch it twice. Yeah. It's fine. And if there was less boobs and awkward sex, I think I would have liked it a little bit more. But I just can't handle that. I just don't like the 80s, 70s style of, like, pile in as many boobs as you can.
Yeah.
I just don't like it.
Yeah.
And, like, it was all very, you know, it felt kind of, like, degrading and, like, this is a piece of meat person type of situation. But otherwise, it was okay. And, like, Larry was a pretty good actor. The rest of them weren't super great.
Yeah.
But like, they weren't in other things. That's what these actors were like, okay? So
what would you grade it?
Probably a 4. I think that's a pretty fair grading, because like some of these special effects weren't terrible, and like I don't know, it's just kind of predictable once you know that there's a ghost involved, because at first I thought it was just going to be the crazy guy, and then it turns into ghost, and it's like, okay, cool.
Also, how do you know? Well, my son is obviously pledging here. I just don't know which one he is.
Yeah, like, this is the year he would be here, but who is he?
I'm such a good dad. I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Like,
what is your name before I kill you?
I'm gonna murder everyone else in the house.
Well, I mean, part of it makes sense because they had been, you know, quote unquote, torturing the pledges, and that's what happened to him. But then he kills the pledges.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just find your son like a good dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if you want to kill the other guy, sure, whatevs, but why are you killing the other pledges?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
No.
Nah.
They're doing what they're told, and that's stupid.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, it was
Sure.
fine. Thanks, James.
Who was the one that got branded again?
Larry did. He
Larry
got the real brand.
So his dad did that to him. Because Dan had to have been possessed at that point.
Yeah, unless he was just being crazy Dan, but yeah, I guess.
If he was possessed at that point.
Yeah, that is
You're
true.
bad dad,
Bad
Sid.
Bad dad.
That's not rad.
No. So, that's that movie. It was definitely an 80s, like, second rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I recommend people watching this one for fun. Like, I guess if you're into that thing and you don't mind a lot of boobs, or you want a lot of boobs, then sure.
If you want a lot of boobs, just go watch fucking anything else.
Right.
Like,
but it was fun to watch just for, like, the pain that it caused. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that this is what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, hopefully that was exciting to listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Thanks for joining us on the wild ride.
Yep. See you next week.
Bye-bye.